And yesterday we brought you a story out of Newton where Newton police lieutenant is now facing a second-degree murder charge after a chase turned deadly. Police say Carlos Uribe fired his weapon at a motorcyclist during a chase last month, and the district attorney says his actions were not justified. Our Jesse Pierre was in the courtroom yesterday where Uribe faced a judge. We want to play that report for you now and get you caught up with this story.
Newton Police Lieutenant Carlos Uribe, charged with second-degree murder, faced a Catawba County judge Tuesday.
I know the Newton Police Department very well. They're all stand-up guys, and it's really kind of a shock, honestly.
It all stems from a police chase that ended in gunfire on June 26. Newton police say officers tried to pull over 21-year-old Camden Childers on U.S. Highway 70 for multiple traffic violations. Police say he did not stop, so they pursued him.
I think there's probably like 8 or 9 cop cars, and they were chasing a guy on a motorcycle, and the guy on the motorcycle was really going slow. I mean, he honestly was probably going like 20, 25 miles an hour.
At some point, there was a collision between Childers and an officer. After that, there was an altercation between Uribe and Childers, where Uribe shot and killed Childers. The DA says after reviewing body-worn cam footage, dash cam video, and witness interviews, found the use of deadly force was not justified.
All right, so again, Uribe now facing a charge of second-degree murder in the shooting death of 21-year-old Camden Childers. And what makes this case particularly interesting, definitely significant, is that a police officer facing this major charge for an on-duty shooting. Joining us this morning are attorneys William K. Goldfarb and Eric Doggett, who represent Camden's mother, Melissa Childers, in a wrongful death and civil rights violations claims. Good morning, gentlemen, and let me just start with you, Eric. Talk to us about what this police officer is facing and the events leading up to this charge, and what makes this case different from a typical officer-involved shooting.
Well, the general process when you have an officer-involved shooting in North Carolina is the State Bureau of Investigation, the SBI, investigates the matter, gets all the evidence together, and presents a report to the district attorney. The district attorney then reviews it and decides if they're going to basically pursue criminal proceedings or any criminal charges. The vast majority of the times, no charges are ever pursued. No criminal charges are. However, that doesn't mean that civil rights claims don't exist and aren't pursued, because they're completely different standards. In this case, what was really unusual is that criminal charges were pursued and second-degree murder charges were pursued. And in fact, Mr. Uribe, or Lieutenant Uribe, was indicted by grand jury, which meant that they found probable cause for second-degree murder charges in this case. Now, he hasn't been tried. Whether he's guilty or not will be determined by a jury at some point. However, second-degree murder, the elements of that, it's the unlawful killing of a human being with malice, but without premeditation and deliberation. And malice can be established by the intentional use of a deadly weapon to inflict a wound that proximately causes or results in death. And we believe that that's the situation here in this case. And while so this is extremely unusual. You very rarely see officers charged with murder in an online duty case. So this is virtually unprecedented, certainly in this state.
Witnesses I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I'm just sorry that this resulted in a real tragic death of Camden in this case, and his mother and family are just absolutely distraught over it. And again, it's very early in the process. There's a lot of information and a lot of recordings, et cetera, that we haven't seen, but that the district attorney has, and presumably a grand jury has as well too. So the story we'll let that unfold as the district attorney pursues this case.
Yeah, so how do civil cases proceed alongside a criminal prosecution?
Well, typically as we go through these, we try. Well, actually, let me defer to Mr. Goldfarb on this one.
Sure. Well, good morning, Ms. Bragg. Nice to see you. So, the criminal case takes precedence, okay? That's just the way it is. And in order for the civil case to find out the information that it needs in order to bring the civil action, we kind of lag behind. And the theory is because the district attorney and the people who are prosecuting the case want to make certain that they have control of what the evidence is, and in any case, the evidence in a trial comes from within the courtroom through video, through witnesses, through depositions and things like that. And what can happen in cases like this, and what is happening, in this case and many others, is people who are not in the courtroom, who have not seen the tapes or anything, begin to give their opinions and thoughts to what happens in the case. And when the case is ultimately tried, you want people on the jury who are open-minded and who have not been predisposed to information that may not even be true. And so the body cam, the police car video, these interviews and such, they're kept very close to the vest by the district attorney, not to be mean and not to keep the public from knowing, but in order to do their job. So there are mechanisms where in the civil case where we represent the mom, okay, in constitutional violations, a wrongful death case, where there are mechanisms where we can get a hold of those things. And we must file the motions with the court. The judge must allow it. And then we can begin to look into it. And what we promised the district attorney, family did, is that we would not go talking all about this thing. There's things that are out there that are hurtful comments, some of them. And then others, we don't know whether they're true or not. And we'd love to be able to respond. But we're not doing that. And we're not going to do that until we actually know what happened. Then when we respond, we'll be responding with the truth. So, again, the civil case lags behind the criminal case, but we're going to get there. And we're going to know what happened. And we're going to do everything we can to bring justice to this family for the tragic, tragic death that occurred.
Our reporter Jesse said, and in the documents, the prosecution alleging that Camden had his hands in the air, clearly unarmed when he was kicked and then shot. If you're able to answer, how does this sequence of events support a murder charge rather than a lesser charge? I know you're dealing with the civil part of it, but if you're able to just kind of weigh in on what the evidence leads to that indictment.
Mr. Doggett, go ahead.
Well, what I'll just say is from what has been described is in the tapes and I guess the facts that you just spoke about was that the shooting was unjustified based on what I presume the entirety of the evidence that the district attorney reviewed. Apparently, Camden did not represent a threat to anybody at that point in time. He was unarmed. And of course, he said he was kicked down, his hands behind his back when he was shot in the chest. Okay, so he said there was no justification for that shooting. And that makes it an unlawful killing of a human being. And he intentionally used his gun to shoot him. And that resulted in his death. And that would constitute a charge of second-degree murder, which is the unlawful killing of a human being with malice. Of course, malice being the intentional shooting of him to inflict the wound that caused his death, but without premeditation and deliberation because it occurred at the scene.
What would justice look like for the Childers family?
Well, with regard to the criminal part, the the full sentencing that could take place when someone intentionally kills another person. I mean, they just can't even believe what happened. And so I mean, that's it. You know, that's the justice they're seeking. Then with regard to what Mr. Doggett and I are doing, well, there is compensation for his companionship, the society that he gave, his comfort that he gave the family. And we understand that he was the person that kind of brought this family together. He's a 21-year-old boy, whole life ahead of him. Family loved him, and he brought joy, and he helped the family. And all of a sudden, this loved one is gone. And that needs to be recognized. That human life that was taken, it needs to be recognized.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you know, I can't imagine what his mother's going through. I can think of no worse curse than to outlive your children. And no amount of money can compensate for the pain and anguish that the mother, Ms. Childers, has gone through. Unfortunately, our court systems that's the only kind of relief that they can provide in this, in recognizing it. And there's certain wrongful death claims, et cetera, that William just discussed that provide some measure of closure and relief for that.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the mom, Melissa, how she's coping with the loss of her son, of course, but also the very public nature of this case, right?
Ms. Bragg, she is up and down and up and down. She is very upset at times, and then at other times calm. And it's like a dream that she would hope that she would wake up from, and this would all be gone. And the fact that she is very, she's not to express herself openly and publicly about all of the hurt that she has, just because we're trying to protect the process. That's also difficult. She wants to say, she wants to tell people how much she loved her son and how much he meant to the family and what he was like, the fun things that they would do, and that will come about in the right time and in the right place. But she's a strong lady, and she's going to see this thing through. But it's very difficult for her.
Yeah, I will tell you that one of the biggest issues that she's had is she wants to know exactly what happened, and she feels what her son went through. And I will tell you, early on, when we first started speaking with her, she told us what she felt had happened. And as the story comes out, she had a premonition of what happened, had nightmares about it. And it's playing out just as she thought it had, which is, I mean, shows how close she was to her son.
Yeah, how bizarre. What specific information do you believe the public still needs to see, the family asking for full transparency? Or is that going to compromise the case?
Well, I believe that there's enough public interest that here at some point that basically the body cam videos and the dash cam videos, that both she and the public have a right to review those and see what happened.
Of course, a case like this comes at a time of national conversation about police reform and accountability. Is this a potential turning point then in how officer-involved shootings are prosecuted, both criminally and civilly?
Well, one thing I would just like to say is first off, the vast majority of our police and law enforcement officers out there, they put their life on the line every day. They do their job. They're great. They're outstanding people. I support them, and they've supported me. So this isn't meant to cast aspersions on all of law enforcement, because we don't. However, sometimes you have a situation where someone just clearly goes over the line, and I can't say that that's here in this case, other than basing it on the fact that a grand jury found that there was probable cause to indict him for second-degree murder. And I take that very seriously. And I think that the district attorney, Scott Reilly, was really courageous in terms of presenting that to a grand jury and pursuing this prosecution.
And Ms. Bragg, to dovetail on to what Mr. Doggett said, Totally echo everything he said about police officers and them protecting us and being able to feel comfortable when they're around. You feel protected, and they're fantastic. Unfortunately, just like any profession, any body, there can be a bad egg, and we don't know. We've not seen the tapes, but apparently it's something like that, and I don't want to begin a whole debate about this. But to answer your question, is this the beginning of some sort of turnaround? I don't know if we know that until we look at the tapes, okay, see what they say, and then compare them to other videos where the charges were not brought. You understand? And compare. But this one could have been so egregious that it's like, oh my God, we don't even have a choice, where the others were maybe, I don't know, do we bring them or do we not? So I think that question can be answered once these videos are compared to other videos where charges were not brought. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. What kind of timeline are you looking at or expect? I know the criminal case first, right, and then civil litigation following. What in the coming months, years, what are we looking at?
Well,
Go
a
ahead.
civil
You go ahead. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I was interrupted.
A civil act, yeah, sorry. This involves a wrongful death, and in North Carolina, civil action has to be initiated within 2 years of the death. So that would be the outside of the last point when the case has to be filed. In civil rights cases, wrongful death cases are exceedingly difficult and very complicated. We like to make sure we have all the evidence, all the information that we can possibly get before we file something. I can't forecast right now when precisely that will be, but it'll be when we believe that we have everything together to make that happen. And we'll continue to work with the authorities to make sure that we can get what is needed to be able to timely file a lawsuit in this matter.
And we're hoping certainly it's not years. You know, that is the statute of limitations. We're not looking down there and say, oh, that's when we're going to start. That's not what's in our brains at all. We want to get to it as quickly as possible.
Anything else you want us or Melissa Childers wants us to know about Camden beyond the circumstances of his death?
Know that he was a loved individual, and with regard to public comments, because social media is such a big thing these days, and people say stuff without knowing the full facts just to be able to weigh in on things. I think what I'd like to say is hold back and think if you actually know what actually happened. If you do, fine. If you don't hurt feelings and raise anger for either side of the case. Take a step back. Let the process work instead of getting all fired up about stuff. You know, unless you were there and you saw and you can actually be a real witness, well, then you do what you want to do. But that's my thought on the whole thing, because it's very hurtful to read bad things. And I'm sure for either side. And when people don't even know, they're just giving their thoughts and opinions to try to stoke the fire. It's like that's not a good thing. It really isn't. Be mature. Just take a step back.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there seems to be an inverse relationship between the amount of knowledge some folks have versus the amount of opinionation they have.
Yes, the evil of social media for sure. Well, gentlemen, we appreciate your time this morning. Attorneys William Goldfarb and Eric Doggett, who are representing Camden's mother, Melissa Childers, in a wrongful death and civil rights violations claim. Thank you for your time and your insight this morning.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.